Good morning again. My name is Bren. My pronouns are she and her. As a point of visual reference, I'm a short, queer white woman with short gray hair and glasses. I'm wearing a black shirt, and because we're virtual, I may or may not still have my pajama bottoms on. I also want to acknowledge that I am standing on Lenape land, known as the Lenape. I want to first thank the Summer Worship Selection Team, Rev, and Reverend Abby for this honor and for trusting me with this important responsibility this morning. I also want to thank Steph, Lincoln, and John B. for all their guidance, enthusiasm, and support over the last month in preparing for today's homily. I want to also just give a special shout out for the tech team who on very short notice were able to pull this off so that we could all still gather here this morning. And especially Mike, who at the very last minute spent a lot of time with me on Friday night and even early this morning to make sure that I was fully prepared and comfortable with the virtual service. And finally, I really want to acknowledge the other worship leaders and worship associates who came before me in this summer series. The amount of work that goes into preparing for the summer series is really impressive. Many of the worship leaders have, in their own way, contributed to today's conversation. For example, Beth began our summer series with a summer solstice celebration when she acknowledged that we are connected to and part of nature. Raymond shared a story about sitting around in a circle at a bonfire within, how he described it, within the interconnected web of existence that binds us. Aaron reminded us that hope is a dimension of the spirit, and when we lose it, we have to seek it not only within ourselves, but within the people around us. Earlier this month, Kelly read an original piece that challenged us to consider that the goal is the human being, its connection, communion, whether immediate or across 1,000 years and miles. Daniel encouraged us to build community around discovering shared meaning. While each of the prior sermons had their very specific focus, it's really fair to say that all reflected the traditions of interconnectedness, healing, and community often found in circles. Circles, even in their simplest of forms, are also complex, symbolic, and often abstract. In the ancestral and indigenous spiritual traditions, circles are considered sacred spaces. In the circle, there are no beginnings, there's no endings. It's a continuous loop that embodies the cycles of life, death, and rebirth, providing solace in the predictability and constancy amidst life's chaos. Circles evoke a sense of unity, belonging, and shared experience. The act of forming a circle can create a space for deeper connection and introspection, allowing people to gather and share their perspectives and participate in rituals and ceremonies. Circles can be used as a framework for communication, learning, and even reconciliation. We see these examples in talking circles, healing circles, and restorative justice circles. One of the most recognizable expressions of the traditional use of a circle is the medicine wheel, the sacred symbol used by many indigenous cultures representing balance, interconnectedness, and the cyclical nature of life. The medicine wheel is often depicted as a circle that's broken into 4 quadrants. Each of these quadrants symbolize a different aspect of life, such as the 4 directions, the 4 seasons, the 4 elements, or the 4 stages of life. Pagans and witches, welcome to the chat. Pagans and witches cast sacred circles and circles of protection to create and define a sacred space for rituals, spell work, energy, focus, and protection. These circles create a boundary to keep the positive energy in and the negative energy out. We at UU even have circles We call them chalice circles, kinship circles, leader circles. We even had a UUA commission on institutional change that published a report in 2020 called Widening the Circle of Concern. From the UU series on shared values, and I want to read this quote because it was so important. It says, Unitarian Universalism has evolved in the context of a changing American and global society and in response to new insights from an ever-widening circle of voices and perspectives. In a spiral-like fashion that is never perfect and never finished, we pay attention and learn from experience. We respond and act in the world and repeat. So, many of you may have been asking yourself in thinking about today's homily, what do circles and elephants have in common? We're going to talk about that today. So when I was a kid, I was about 6 or 8 years old. My family went to the circus, the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, to be exact. It was at the old Spectrum Arena, which I know that some of you remember that well. There were always a lot of shows, a lot of great concerts at the Spectrum. But this particular day, the circus was there. I remember that we had parked around back, and as we were making our way to the front entrance of the venue, we passed the animals who were being staged out back, right? So there were lions and tigers and horses. But what I remember most clearly was being awestruck by this massive elephant. And then I quickly realized that the elephant was chained around its ankle, and the chain was hooked to a stake. Now, some of you might remember the story. We've heard it many times that when elephants were chained like that to a stake, that the stake had to be in the ground initially. But if enough time passed, you could take the stake out of the ground because the elephant just stopped fighting. And I remember seeing this elephant, this beautiful, majestic creature, being chained and just rocking and swaying, trying to lift its leg. I still remember that disturbing image some 50 years later. I also remember that I cried and cried. I cried while my mom was pulling me along because, we paid good money to see the circus. I cried when I saw the elephants again inside the arena, in the big top. And while I don't exactly remember, I will bet that I cried that night when I went to bed. And then, as we so often do as human beings, I forgot. Now, by the way, I have a couple of really interesting tidbits that I've just recently learned. In fact, I just learned from Lincoln that P.T. Barnum was famously a Universalist. He donated a bunch of money and helped found Tufts University. Another little tidbit of information that I found in some of my research was that Tufts University mascot, still to this day, is Jumbo the elephant, named after one of P.T. Barnum's circus elephants. So, P.T. Barnum, a little problematic, but history nonetheless. So anyway, I forgot all about the elephant and the circle as I continued in my journey of life. Some of you know, because I've been free in sharing this, and you've heard me say that I really struggled as a young person. When I was 17, I became an emancipated adult out of foster care. Now, when I say it like that, it sounds really cool, right? Like I was some independent, self-starter, go-getter as a teenager, ready to take on the world, right? But in reality, I became emancipated because my foster parents, mom and dad, kicked me out of the house and changed the locks, literally changed the locks, because I was out of control and I was fully succumbing to my disease of addiction. In 1987, after spending several years on the street, spiraling into shame, regret, and degradation, I finally surrendered and got clean. Now, when I got clean early on, I heard about how important the we was to recovery. I can't do this by myself. We can do it together, and I think I'll let you, right? the whole group think. Now, I want to be really clear that I don't want to minimize that group think, because at the time it was very important to me, and it was absolutely what I needed to hear to start my process. And I was surrounded by beautiful, amazing people. One day early in my recovery, I heard someone share about the we, and they were sharing their own story, but they gave this concept that I hadn't heard before. And it was describing the disease of addiction as like a lion, right? And that we in recovery were a group of gazelles. So if you could picture this image, right? Um, my disease, my lion, was still in the tall grass, right? Somewhere in the savannah. And what do lions do in the tall grass? Well, they're waiting. They're waiting for one of the gazelles to become separated from the rest. They're waiting for the gazelles to break off and to splinter and be distracted. Sometimes lions work together. So my lion, my disease, and your lion can sometimes be in cahoots, and they hunt together, and they work at dividing and conquering, right? So, I thought a lot about this story about gazelles. I have to stay in the middle. It's my responsibility to run with the rest of the group, and you only have to be faster than the slowest one, right? It made sense to me. I found my people. I kept my head down. I stayed in the middle. I did what they told me. And with a whole lot of luck and perseverance, I stayed clean. The fable of the lions and gazelles held me in my recovery for several years. Then one day, after being clean for a few years, I was watching Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. Now, listen, I have to really interject something here, or my wife will. Um, I can't see her right now, but I'm pretty sure she's chuckling. Over the years, when I share this story about the elephants and the lions and the gazelles, I often, it morphed into I was watching the Animal Planet. But if I'm honest about the math, it was definitely Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. They were having a special on this TV show I was watching on elephants. And I learned some amazing things about elephants. First, I learned that elephants are matriarchal, which always scores points with me. In various African cultures and mythology, elephants are frequently portrayed as symbols of strength, power, wisdom. In fact, in the Ashanti tradition, elephants are considered wise ancestral chiefs who impartially settle disputes among other animals. Ganesha is a revered Hindu deity, easily recognized by his elephant head, and is considered to be the remover of obstacles, the protector from evil, the patron of new beginnings, wisdom, good luck, wealth, and joy. But the most amazing thing that I saw on this TV show about elephants was how they care for each other. When there's a threat to the herd, maybe a lion, and there's a baby elephant or a sick or injured elephant, the others in the herd circle up. They circle up around that baby. They circle up around that sick or injured elephant. And they don't just circle up. They actually form a circle that faces outward. They're protecting the one in the center from the threat. And they do this until the elephant in the center is either strong enough to stand on their own or is able to walk with the herd again. Or if the elephant in the center passes, the herd mourns that elephant before they move on. They create a sacred, powerful, protective circle. It was at that point in my life that I declared, F the gazelles, I'm an elephant. I realized that throughout my life, and especially in my recovery, people have circled up around me. They've circled up around me when I was a baby. They circled up around me when I was new in recovery. They circled up around me when I was a youngster trying to figure things out, when I've been sick or injured through my bad choices or just life on life's terms. I realized that this is the community that I was seeking. This is the community that I needed in my life. Not the individualistic ethos of every gazelle or every person out for themselves, just trying to survive. You know, if I got myself in the biggest enough group and ran faster than the slowest person, then if I'm lucky enough, I wouldn't be eaten up by a few lions in a much smaller pack who dominate with fear, with division, with aggression, with the threat of violence, with actual violence, and even death. I wanted to be a member of a herd. And maybe instead I could actually be a member of a herd, a true community who circled up around those most in need and faced threats instead of running from them. A herd who believes in unity, belonging, shared experience, magic, protection, and interconnectedness with other elephants who no longer wear chains and instead move in grace and dignity, who mourn and are fierce, maternal, wise, and loving. I also realize that if I benefit from this type of community, which I have, and those connections and circles have repeatedly awakened my spirit, which they have, like right here at UU, then it is also my responsibility. It is my duty when I'm strong enough to stand, to look out for the youngsters, for the sick, for the injured, to circle up around them. Because I have come to understand that we all, at some point and repeatedly, need the protection of our herd. Let it be so.
Hi, I'm Reverend Abby Tennis, and I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Reverend Alexandre da Silva Soto, and my pronouns are they, them, and theirs.
And we are the ministers of the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, where it is our mission to awaken love and justice in our lives and in the world. We're so glad you watched this video, and we hope that its message connects with your soul.
We also want to invite you to join us for Zoom services Sunday morning at 11 a.m. or come in person at 2125 Chestnut Street, Center City, Philadelphia.
Whether you join in person or online, in these services you'll hear messages like you just heard. You'll get a chance to sing together, pray together, and even greet one another in coffee hour afterwards, whether you're brand new or a longtime member.
You can always find a Zoom link to our services and more about what to expect on Sunday mornings on our website, philauu.org. The link is below.
If you are connecting with this message and feel moved to give to the mission of this congregation, we invite you to click on the link below again and follow the prompts to give, or send a text message to 215-709-5095. And again, follow the prompts.
If someone in your life needs to hear these words today, please share this video. And again, thank you so much for watching.
We hope to see you soon.
See you soon.